There is a place at the top of our planet where the ocean can freeze, where winter can last for months, and where the sun can disappear beneath the horizon for weeks at a time. This is the Arctic, a vast world of ice, ocean, mountains, tundra, and darkness. At first glance, it can look empty, almost lifeless. But beneath the frozen surface, an entire ecosystem survives. Polar bears move across the sea ice. Whales travel through dark northern waters. Millions of birds arrive during the short summer. And people have lived here for thousands of years. Yet the Arctic is changing. The ice is retreating. The landscape is transforming. And what happens here may reach far beyond the Arctic itself. So what really lies at the top of the world? And why does this frozen region matter to all of us? When people imagine the Arctic, they often picture a giant continent covered in snow. But that is not what the Arctic is. The Arctic is primarily an ocean. At its center lies the Arctic Ocean. Around it are parts of North America, Europe, and Asia. The region includes northern Canada, Alaska, Greenland, Iceland, Scandinavia, and northern Russia. There is no single boundary that defines the Arctic. One common definition uses the Arctic Circle. It lies at about 66.5 degrees north latitude. Beyond this line, something remarkable happens. At least once each year, the sun does not set for a full day. And at another time of year, it does not rise for a full day. Near the North Pole, the effect becomes even more extreme. The sun rises only once a year, and it sets only once a year. For several months, daylight can continue without a normal sunset. Then comes a long period of darkness. For people living in the Arctic, this unusual cycle is simply part of life. There is another common misunderstanding about the Arctic. The North Pole is not a continent. There is no permanent land beneath the geographic North Pole. Instead, the North Pole lies above the Arctic Ocean. Its surface is covered by floating sea ice. So, in theory, you could stand at the North Pole. But you would be standing on ice, floating above deep ocean water. And that ice is constantly moving. Wind pushes it. Ocean currents move it. Temperature changes reshape it. The surface beneath your feet is never truly permanent. This is one of the biggest differences between the two polar regions. Antarctica is a continent surrounded by ocean. The Arctic is an ocean surrounded by land. That simple difference shapes their climate, their wildlife, their ice, and even their future. The Arctic is one of the coldest environments on Earth. During winter, temperatures can fall far below freezing. In some inland regions, the cold can become extraordinarily severe. But the Arctic is not equally cold everywhere. The ocean plays an important role. Water stores heat. Because of this, the Arctic Ocean can moderate temperatures along nearby coastlines. Even so, winter remains extreme. Snow can cover the landscape. Strong winds can reduce visibility. And darkness can last for weeks or even months. For humans, survival requires preparation. For wildlife, survival depends on adaptation. And few animals demonstrate this better than the polar bear. The polar bear is perhaps the most recognizable symbol of the Arctic. Its body is built for life in the cold. Thick fur provides insulation. A layer of body fat helps conserve heat. And its large paws help distribute its weight across the ice. Those paws also act like paddles when the bear swims. Polar bears are powerful swimmers, but their lives are closely connected to sea ice. They use the ice as a platform for hunting, especially when searching for seals. This creates a powerful relationship between the animal and its environment. When the sea ice changes, the world of the polar bear changes with it. And this is one reason scientists pay such close attention to the Arctic. It is not simply a remote wilderness. It is also one of the clearest places to observe major changes in Earth's climate. From above, the Arctic can look almost lifeless. But beneath the ice, there is another world. tiny organisms form the foundation of the Arctic marine ecosystem. During the polar summer, sunlight returns. Phytoplankton begin to grow. They become food for small marine animals. Those animals support fish. Fish support seabirds and marine mammals, and larger predators depend on the entire chain. Seals live beneath and around the sea ice. Walruses gather along Arctic shores. Narwhals travel through northern waters. Beluga whales move through the Arctic Ocean. Bowhead whales can migrate through some of the most difficult waters on Earth. The Arctic is therefore not a frozen desert without life. It is a complex ecosystem, one built around ice and the seasonal return of sunlight. Perhaps the strangest season in the Arctic is summer. After months of darkness, the sun returns, and then it seems unwilling to disappear. For weeks, parts of the Arctic can remain illuminated around the clock. Snow begins to melt. Plants emerge from the frozen ground. Rivers begin to flow, and birds arrive in enormous numbers. Some species travel thousands of kilometers to reach the Arctic. They come to feed, to reproduce, and to raise their young. The Arctic summer is short, but it is intense. Almost everything happens quickly. Plants grow rapidly. Animals feed almost continuously. Migratory birds take advantage of every hour of daylight. For a brief period, the frozen world becomes surprisingly alive. The Arctic is not an empty wilderness. People have lived here for thousands of years. Indigenous peoples developed sophisticated ways to survive in some of the harshest environments on Earth. Their knowledge was built over generations. They learned to read weather patterns. They learned how to travel across snow and ice. They learned how to hunt, how to build shelters, and how to understand the behavior of animals. For many Arctic communities, the environment is more than a backdrop. It is part of culture, part of identity, part of history, and part of everyday life. Modern technology has changed many aspects of Arctic life, but traditional knowledge remains important, especially as the environment itself continues to change. One of the most beautiful sights in the Arctic is sea ice. From a distance, it may appear completely white, but up close, ice can reveal shades of blue, turquoise, and deep green. Air bubbles become trapped inside. Cracks spread across the surface. Snow forms strange patterns, and sunlight reflects across the frozen landscape. Icebergs can take even more extraordinary shapes. Some resemble mountains, others look like enormous sculptures. But what we see is only part of the story. Most of an iceberg remains beneath the water. That is why icebergs can appear deceptively small from the surface. The Arctic is filled with landscapes that seem almost unreal, yet every one of them is created by natural processes, not imagination. For centuries, the Arctic followed a relatively predictable seasonal rhythm. Sea ice formed during the cold season. It expanded. Then summer arrived. Some of the ice melted, and winter returned again. Today, that cycle is changing. The Arctic is warming faster than the global average. Sea ice has declined dramatically over recent decades. Scientists monitor these changes using satellites, aircraft, ships, and instruments across the region. As the ice declines, parts of the Arctic Ocean become more accessible. This creates new possibilities, but it also creates new risks. As sea ice declines, areas that were once extremely difficult to reach can become more accessible. Ships can travel through northern routes for longer periods. Resources beneath the Arctic may become easier to reach. Tourism is also increasing in some areas, but greater access comes with consequences. The Arctic ecosystem is extremely sensitive. More shipping can bring noise and pollution. More development can disturb wildlife. Oil spills would be particularly difficult to manage in such remote environments. And when sea ice disappears, animals that depend on it can lose important habitat. The Arctic is therefore becoming a region of growing strategic interest, not only for scientists, but also for governments, businesses, and local communities. The frozen North is becoming increasingly connected to the decisions of the modern world. You might wonder, why should changes thousands of kilometers away matter to people living elsewhere? The answer is simple. The Arctic is connected to the rest of Earth. Ice reflects sunlight back into space. When bright ice disappears, darker ocean water absorbs more solar energy. This can contribute to further warming. The Arctic also influences atmospheric circulation. Changes in the region can affect ocean systems and weather patterns far beyond the polar north. The Arctic is not isolated. It is part of Earth's larger climate system. What happens there does not necessarily stay there. There is something unsettling about the Arctic. For generations, people imagined it as a permanent world of ice, a place where the landscape seemed almost timeless. But ice is not permanent. It is part of a natural cycle, and that cycle is changing. Some Arctic communities are already experiencing major environmental changes. Coastlines can become more vulnerable to erosion. Permafrost can thaw. Travel routes across frozen ground can become less predictable. Animals may change their movements as conditions change, and landscapes that remain stable for generations can begin to transform. The Arctic is therefore more than a symbol of cold. It is a reminder of how dynamic our planet really is. Scientists do not know exactly what the Arctic will look like decades from now, but they know the region is changing. Its future will depend on many factors: global greenhouse gas emissions, ocean temperatures, atmospheric circulation, human development, and decisions made by countries far beyond the Arctic Circle. There will also be difficult questions. How should new shipping routes be managed? How can Arctic communities benefit from economic development? How can wildlife be protected? And how much of this ancient environment can be preserved? There are no simple answers. But one thing is certain: the Arctic will continue to matter. At the top of our planet lies a world that seems almost impossible. An ocean covered in drifting ice. A place where winter can last for months. A place where the sun can disappear and then return without setting. It is home to polar bears, whales, seals, birds, and countless smaller organisms. It is also home to people who have learned how to live with extreme conditions. The Arctic may appear distant, empty, and frozen in time, but it is changing. And perhaps that is the most important thing to remember. The Arctic is not simply the frozen world at the top of a map. It is part of something much larger, a system connecting the ocean, the atmosphere, the climate, and every part of our planet. So when we look toward the Arctic, we are not looking at the edge of Earth. We are looking at one of the places where Earth's future may be written. And perhaps one day, when we look back at photographs of today's Arctic, we may realize just how extraordinary this frozen world really was.